Starting off this countdown, we have the faceless toad. So in 2016, herpetologist Jill Fleming was in a forest in Connecticut exploring the wildlife when she came across a toad that was lacking its entire face. But it was still alive, and it was hopping around into things. There's a couple of theories as to what happened to this toad. Theory 1 is that its face was eaten off by flesh-eating toadfly larvae. Theory 2 is that a predator ate its face off during hibernation, and since it did happen when it was hibernating, its face managed to heal itself over. Either way, this toad is quite a weird find. In our 9th spot, we have the Lincoln log. Posted on Reddit by the user Texas Joey, they were out for a hike somewhere in Texas when they came across something very odd. Embedded in the trunk of a fallen tree were rows upon rows of pennies. It didn't make any sense, pun intended. There were so many pennies that he couldn't coint how many there were. I mean, it looks pretty cool, but who decided to do this? How much money did they spend on it, and how did they get the pennies in the tree in the first place? Coming in at number 8, we have the artificial womb. A team of researchers at a Philadelphia lab have created an artificial womb that in the future may be able to help premature babies. So basically, they created a bag of fluids to resemble the womb with a mechanical placenta that keeps blood oxygenated. As part of the experiment, they removed lambs who were just 15 to 17 weeks old from their mothers and placed them in this bag. They discovered that the lambs could grow normally with few complications. That's a pretty huge discovery, especially since premature babies are prone to infection in incubators. As weird as it may be, an artificial womb might be the way to go. Coming in at number 7, we have the mysterious stone. In 1872, a weird stone was found buried close to Lake Winnipesaukee, I know I pronounced that wrong, in New Hampshire. The stone looks like an egg in shape, is dark, smooth, and has a number of carved images on it. Some of the carved things are a face, corn, and a teepee. But since the discovery, it has baffled scientists. What is it? Who made it, and why? One theory is that it was made by Native Americans as sort of like an olive branch to give to other tribes. Another theory is that it has Celtic or Inuit origins. Another thing that's weird about the stone is that there are 2 holes drilled into it, one at the top and one at the bottom. But they are so precise. The question is, how did they manage that without modern day tools? Because of this, some people believe that it was a thunderstorm made by supernatural forces. In our 6th spot, we have Dighton Rock. In 1690, a 40-ton boulder with weird markings was found in the Taunton River in Massachusetts. No one knows what the markings are or what it's about. One theory is that the markings are Norse in origin. It possibly depicts a Viking voyage. Another theory is that it was the work of Native Americans. The rock is telling us something, but we haven't figured it out just yet. Over the years, people have tried to decode it, but still haven't been successful. The only people that know what the rock means are the ones that made it themselves. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with America's Stonehenge. Located outside of Salem, New Hampshire, is a bunch of weird rock structures known as America's Stonehenge. So there's a bunch of man-made chambers, walls, and structures all made out of stone. In fact, this structure is considered the oldest man-made construction in the US. It's thought to be over 4,000 years old, but no one knows what it was used for or why it was built. One theory is that it was used as an area for ceremonial gatherings. Another theory is that it somehow is an astrological calendar. But we truly don't know. So for now, it remains a weird mystery. Coming in at number 4, we have Donald Trump Eye. Back in 2017, a strange moth was discovered in Southern California. It's a tiny moth with yellowish white scales on its head, and it was named Neopalpa Donald Trump Eye. Yeah, Donald Trump has its own moth named after him. Why? Well, the scales on the moth's head look a lot like Donald Trump's signature hairdo, so the scientist that discovered it named it after him. Which, I mean, it's cool, I want something named after me, but certainly not a moth. Moving on to number 3, we have the Great Serpent Mound. Located in Ohio, the Great Serpent Mound is an effigy mound. aka a fancy way of saying a mound in the shape of an animal. In this case, it looks like a snake with a curled tail. Some say that it looks like the snake has its mouth open and it's about to engulf an egg, while others believe it depicts a snake with one big eye. So this mound is the world's largest surviving effigy mound from the prehistoric era. Built around 1080, this mound is around 1,348 meters long and 3 feet high. What makes it weird is the fact that we don't know why this was created, or by what culture, or what its use was. Maybe it was used in religious ceremonies, or is some sort of calendar. Who knows? In our second spot, we have the pig-human hybrid. Yeah, you heard me correctly. Scientists at the Salk Institute for Biological Sciences in California have created a human-pig hybrid. Now, you're probably wondering, why on earth would they do this? Because that certainly was my question. Well, they did this with hopes that one day they could grow human organs inside of pigs and other animals instead of just waiting for a donor. Yeah, I know how problematic that is going to be for a number of reasons. So in 2017, an embryo was placed in an adult pig for 4 weeks. Then it was taken out to analyze, and the embryo survived and contained some human cells. Now they're gonna figure out if pig embryos can handle enough human cells to create human organs. Now if someone calls you a cow, you can be like, nah honey, only my heart is. And in our number 1 spot, we have the ginormous tadpole. Okay, there's something weird about the amphibians in the States. We got the faceless toad in Connecticut, and now we got a giant tadpole found in Arizona. Tadpoles vary in size, but typically they're anywhere from 1.3 inches to 4.2 inches. But not this tadpole. So while removing invasive bullfrogs from a shallow pond in Arizona, they stumbled upon a disgustingly big bullfrog tadpole. This thing was 10 inches long, larger than a soda can, pretty much as long as a banana, and its head was about the size of a big adult bullfrog's head. And while studying it, it continued to grow bigger and bigger. They believe that its massive size was due to a hormone imbalance. Because of its size, they named it the Goliath tadpole.
That it's probably pretty likely that there were aliens at some point, but since the universe is so old, they might have already died out. All life and cultures rise and fall, and researchers put together a model in recent years that would give more insight into the likelihood of this theory. They took things into account, like sun-like stars that are not too close or too far from planets that are similar to Earth, as well as how frequently there are deadly radiation blasting supernovas, which of course could prove to be a huge problem for life forms, as well as the time that it takes for intelligent life to evolve, provided all the conditions are right. And once the evolution has taken place, how long it would take for a tool-bearing form of life to then destroy itself. That's a lot of factors to consider, and through all of this, it was found that the highest likelihood of life before ours in the Milky Way emerged around 5.5 billion years ago, which would place that before our planet was even formed. This of course would have provided plenty of time for all of the events I just mentioned to have occurred. Not only this, but with a recent James Webb Telescope discovery, we might be learning that galaxies existed long before what we previously thought. James Webb has been using its incredibly powerful technology to glimpse back into the earliest moments of our universe, and just this week it was announced that there are some distant galaxies that predate what we once thought was possible. This is all to say that there are now millions of extra years that have been added to the timeline where some form of life may have developed. And who knows, maybe these life forms do still exist, but we are just too far away for us to reach. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Roswell incident. One of the most famous alien conspiracy stories of all time, this whole rigmarole started in 1947 when some sort of crash took place near a ranch in Roswell, New Mexico. Shortly after this, the Roswell Army Airfield released a statement saying that they had recovered a flying disc from the ranch, but the Army quickly retracted the statement and said that it wasn't that, but instead was a conventional weather balloon. Alright, heard that before. This was a little sketchy, but most people let it slide until the 1970s. What happened in the 70s is that a retired lieutenant colonel began to speak out. In an interview with a UFO researcher, he said that the weather balloon story was a cover-up and that alien remains were actually recovered from the crash site. There were both first and second-hand witnesses who claimed that not only were there at least one, but possibly possibly more alien spacecrafts that had crashed at the scene, but also that extraterrestrial remains were also recovered by the military, who then began to engage in a cover-up. In 1994, the story changed from a weather balloon to a nuclear test surveillance balloon from Project Mogul, and it was stated that the stories of the alien bodies were probably just test dummies that had been dropped from high altitudes. I'm not gonna lie, the whole thing sounds a little sketchy. I obviously wasn't there, so I can't say for certain what happened, but someone is definitely lying about it, that's all I know. In our number 8 spot today, we have the radio signals. Basically, we're getting radio signals from somewhere, but we just aren't quite sure where. It started in 2007 when we began getting what are called fast radio bursts, and they are a totally mysterious phenomena to scientists. These bursts are only a few milliseconds long, but they emit more energy than the sun does in 24 hours. All of this is already super cool and interesting, but here's an even crazier thing about them. The main thing that we know about these bursts is that they're coming from outside of our own galaxy. Space is very cool and very unbelievable. This obviously has led a lot of experts to believe that it could possibly be coming from an advanced civilization that is quite far away, and they may be trying to contact us, but we just don't have the technology to interpret the signals. Maybe one day scientists will figure out a way to accept whatever message it is they are trying to send, or maybe one day we'll get a visit from them and then they'll be mad at us for not answering their messages and just leaving them on red. Either way, it's all very cool and very interesting. In our number 7 spot today, we have the cigar-shaped UFO. Alright, let's set the stage. It's 2:45 a.m. on July 24th, 1948, and there are 20 passengers aboard a twin-engine propeller plane that is at 5,000 feet being flown from Houston to Atlanta by pilot Clarence S. Childs and co-pilot John B. Whitted. Out of the 20 passengers on board, 19 of them are asleep at these early morning hours, and everything seems to be going as per usual until it wasn't. The 2 pilots and the 1 passenger who was awake all witnessed the same thing about 20 miles southeast of Montgomery, Alabama. About a week after the incident, the pilot explained what he had seen by saying, quote, "It was clear there were no wings present, that it was powered by some jet or other type of power, shooting flame from the rear some 50 feet. There were 2 rows of windows which indicated an upper and lower deck, and from inside these windows a very bright light was glowing. Underneath the ship there was a blue glow of light." By his estimates, he watched the UFO for about 10 seconds before it completely vanished. The co-pilot gave a similar explanation and also added, quote, "The object was cigar-shaped and seemed to be about 100 feet in length. The fuselage appeared to be about 3 times the circumference of a B-29 fuselage. It had 2 rows of windows, an upper and a lower. The windows were very large and seemed square. They were white with light which seemed to be caused by some type of combustion. I asked Captain Childs what we had just seen, and he said that he didn't know." While this is obviously very strange and peculiar, what has driven UFO enthusiasts even more is the fact that this strange sighting was, of course, later investigated by the US government, but the results of that investigation have allegedly been mostly destroyed. Does that mean that maybe they found something they aren't willing to share yet? Some believe that perhaps the pilots and passenger witnessed a secret Soviet spycraft, but others believe it definitely was something of the extraterrestrial variety. In our number 6 spot today, we have the NASA Viking experiment. So this is one of the more debated ones on today's list, but that does not mean that it isn't evidence. In 1976, NASA's Viking landers tested the soil on Mars and found some chemicals that could be attributed to signs of life. The soil was mixed with radioactive carbon-labeled nutrients and then tested for the production of radioactive methane gas. The test ended up receiving a positive result, which could indicate that something in the soil is metabolizing the nutrients to produce the gas. Despite further efforts, there still hasn't been any life found, but one of the scientists who worked on this original project, and others as well, stand by what they found and argue that the technology at the time wasn't advanced enough to find the key evidence of life. Hopefully with the Perseverance rover that is, digging in the soil up there now, maybe now is the time that we have the technology to find the true answers behind this one. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Mount Rainier incident. This incident took place when Kenneth Arnold was en route from Chehalis, Washington to Yakima, Washington on June 24th, 1947. Kenneth was traveling in a privately owned plane when he suddenly saw a bright flash on his wing. He looked around, and this is when he saw a chain of 9 unidentified flying objects approaching Mount Rainier. He explained that he, quote, could see their outline quite plainly against the snow as they approached the mountain. He continued on saying, quote, they flew very close to the mountain tops, directly south to southeast down the hog's back of the range, flying like geese in a diagonal chain-like line as if they were linked together. From here, he explained that, quote, they were approximately 20 or 25 miles away, and I couldn't even see a tail on them. I watched for about 3 minutes, a chain of saucer-like things at least 5 miles long swerving in and out of the high mountain peaks. They were flat like a pie pan and so shiny they reflected the sun like a mirror. He also told investigators that he had never seen anything travel that fast in his life. Unfortunately, Kenneth's story was met with disbelief and actually a lot of ridicule. This made Kenneth quite resentful, but he said, quote, "They can call me Einstein, Flash Gordon, or just a screwball, but I am absolutely certain of what I saw." He added that if he ever saw a phenomena in the sky, quote, "even if it were a 10-story building flying through the air, he would not say a word about it." In our number 4 spot today, we have the fossilized microbes. Another piece of controversial evidence that came from Mars was announced in 1996. NASA scientists announced that they had potentially found what appeared to maybe fossilized microbes in a lump of Martian rock. It is likely that this rock came off during some sort of Mars collision and just casually floated around the solar system for, I don't know, 15 million years before landing in Antarctica in 1984. You know, just casual space stuff. After analyzing the rock, it was revealed that it contained organic molecules and small specks of mineral magnetite, which sometimes is found in the bacteria on Earth. Upon further analysis with an electron microscope, it was claimed that there were signs of nanobacteria. Since then, some claim that the magnetite wasn't that similar to those found in bacteria, and that there is a belief that the signs of nanobacteria could have been grown in a lab. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Big Flap. Back in 1952, while the panic over flying saucers was very real, there were a bunch of strange reports of potential UFO sightings in the skies of Washington, D.C. These sightings later became known as the Big Flap, and they were being reported by civilians as well as military radar operators and pilots. In fact, there were so many people reporting these UFOs that a special intelligence unit of the US Air Force was sent to investigate. What really sparked a lot of concern with these sightings is when radar operators at National watched the objects fly past the White House and Capitol building. This is when 2 F-94 interceptor jets were sent to investigate, but both times, as they approached the mysterious objects, showing on their radar screens, they would just suddenly disappear. In the end, as a result of the investigation, what they found, or really the lack of findings, combined with the official explanation that was released, only worked to fuel some very early conspiracy theories that the government was working to hide the evidence that proves the existence of alien life. In our number 2 spot today, we have Europa. One of Jupiter's moons, called Europa, has a red tinge to it, and in 2001, NASA scientists revealed that it's possible that alien microbes might be responsible for this red color. The surface of the moon is mostly ice, but it has been shown that it reflects infrared radiation in a very bizarre way. This means that something is binding it together, but researchers haven't been able to come up with the correct combination of elements and compounds to make the data make sense. There are some bacteria on Earth that can thrive in extreme conditions, and that also have that red and brown color, which could potentially be responsible for the color on this moon. The surface temperature might be too cold for them to survive, but the warmer interior might be where they are actually located. Some geological activity on the moon could then push them closer to the surface, where they are then flash frozen in place. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the astronaut sightings. We can sit here on Earth all day and talk about the potential for alien life, but who knows more than the people who have actually been to space, which of course are astronauts. Definitely on the list of coolest and scariest jobs in the entire world, there haven't been a ton of people who have had the unbelievable privilege of experiencing space firsthand, but there are even less of them who have claimed to see something that could potentially be proof of alien existence. People who have claimed these sort of things include Edgar Mitchell, Catherine Coleman, and Dr. Brian O'Leary. The very interesting part about many of these claims is that they also include some sort of government cover-up as well. There was also Buzz Aldrin, who spoke about his Apollo 11 experience, and he detailed the crew seeing something flying alongside them, and at first they believed it was the final stage of a detached rocket, but then Mission Control confirmed that it was actually 6,000 miles away from them, leaving them with no answers on what the flying object could actually be. I can't imagine going to space at all, let alone encountering a UFO flying right beside me. Also, I can't believe that I hadn't heard of that story before, because to me, that sounds like full-blown alien contact.
Coming in at number 10 is a portrait of Delphine Lalaurie. Back in 1997, the residents of the apartment building that was once where Madame Delphine Lalaurie's torture chamber stood decided to reach out to local artist Riccardo Pustanio for a beautiful painting of the previous owner, the infamous Madame Lalaurie. Now, I'll start off by saying that she seems like a bad choice of someone to commemorate, given that there are tons of other local celebrities
in New Orleans, but I guess that's beside the point. According to residents, it didn't take long before they began to feel her presence glooming in the halls, with some residents claiming they were haunted by her ghost at night or that they would hear her whispering to them through the art. Soon enough, things got so terrifying that they all decided it would be best to take down the painting and return it back to the painter. However, nowadays it is no longer with Ricardo, but apparently a part of a private collection, and the new mysterious owners are not interested in anyone knowing about anything. In fact, apparently they refuse to discuss its whereabouts or any details about their experience with the cursed painting. Coming in at number 9, the Hope Diamond. As the legend goes, back in 1666, a French merchant obtained this beautiful blue diamond after illegally plucking the gem from a Hindu idol and selling it to King Louis XIV, a sacrilegious crime for which he was apparently later mauled to death by dogs for committing. But fast forward a few years to the French Revolution, and the cursed gem was allegedly stolen again, this time disappearing for years, only reappearing in the 1800s. For years, experts questioned where this jewel had been hidden, but their curiosity was short-lived, as soon the jewel wasted no time ruining lives of those it interacted with and has routinely been blamed for several tragedies over the years. Some of the misfortunes include the loss of great fortune, people's deaths, and people taking their own lives, while some even say Marie Antoinette's death could have been linked to her possession of the cursed diamond. Nowadays, this cursed object is safely stowed away as a part of the Smithsonian Institution, so let's just hope it's never found and stolen again. Otherwise, who knows what could be unleashed. Coming in at number 8, a cursed phone number. While a phone number might not be a physical object that one could uncover, a cursed phone number is definitely not something that you want to have or accidentally dial. Back in the 1970s, there was a pretty widespread urban legend that many talked about, where if you phoned a specific mysterious phone number from a payphone, a woman with an eerie voice would answer, repeating the phrase, help me, Susie's dying." Apparently this woman spoke in a creepy, monotone voice, and everyone who phoned this number described the exact same phenomenon. But I guess the even more mysterious part of it all is that the actual number remains a mystery, as those that dialed it in their youth can't seem to remember the exact sequence, and because of this, it's grown into more of an urban legend than anything else. However, all that being said, it is still a very unsettling little story, one that we can only hope was all made up by a group of pranking teens, but we will never really know the truth unless someone is able to remember the digits to the allegedly cursed number. Next up at number 7, Robert the Doll. In 1904, a boy named Robert Eugene received a doll as a present from his grandfather. Robert was so excited about the gift that he even named the doll after himself. But almost immediately, his parents felt like something wasn't right. They claimed they would hear Robert speaking to his doll at night and that a strange voice would answer back. As time went on, Robert got more and more attached, and his parents began noticing that his behavior was changing for the worse. They would notice something strange, like furniture in different rooms or objects scattered around the house. Robert would get extremely defensive and blame everything on the doll. However, things only got creepier as Robert got older. He kept the doll even as an adult, bringing it with him to his new home with his wife. At least by now he had the sense to leave it up in the attic. But still, neighbors that walked past said the doll was always looking out the window and would watch as you walked by, often changing his expression as if it was taunting you. Years later, when Robert and his wife died, the new owner found the doll in the attic and said that every night they could hear eerie giggling coming from above. From there, it said the doll was donated to a museum in Florida, locked behind glass in a museum and hidden from the public. So while it's not impossible to visit the doll, I would definitely not recommend it. Coming in at number 6, a blindfolded doll. In June of 2014, a creepy doll was found on the side of a busy road. The doll was left under a tree, blindfolded by a piece of cloth that was covered in Arabic that read Bismillah, meaning in the name of Allah. And I mean, isn't that just a recipe for disaster? After the doll's discovery, a mysterious post appeared on Reddit claiming that the doll was known to be possessed by an evil entity and that it could walk and even talk on its own. Apparently, Apparently, the original owner was so afraid the doll was going to kill her or hunt her down if she tried to give it away that she decided to blindfold it to make sure it couldn't see where she went after she left it abandoned. And for good measure, she wrote the Arabic phrase in hopes that it would keep the evil curse tapped within. According to witnesses who found the doll on the road, it mysteriously vanished not long after it was found. And many believe that the curse was passed on to someone who found it and unknowingly removed the curse trapping blindfold. At the moment, no one actually knows where this cursed doll is, so really, for all we know, it could have made its way to North America to continue wreaking havoc on a whole new group of unassuming victims. So whatever you do, if you see a creepy doll on the side of the road, do not pick it up. Coming in at number 5, James Dean's car. If you aren't already familiar, James Dean was an American icon and actor who tragically died at the young age of 24 in a brutal car crash back in 1955. But what's strange is that many believe the reason his car crashed was because it was cursed. According to the British actor Sir Alec Guinness's autobiography, he had met Dean on September 23, 1955, when after just leaving a restaurant that had no tables, he and his friend ran into James, who invited them to dine with him in the restaurant they had just been turned away from. They gladly accepted the invitation, but first, James wanted to show off his new car, a silver Porsche named Little Bastard. According to Guinness, he promptly warned Dean to, quote, "Please, never get in it. If you get in that car, you will be found dead in it by this time next week." And believe it or not, his prediction came true. Over the years, the car was then involved in several other crashes, and those that owned the car claimed to experience increasingly bad luck as it remained in their possession. However, the creepiest part is that no one actually knows where the car is today. Legend has it that parts may have been sold off to various people, while some believe it was hidden away so as not to take the life of anyone else. But either way, it's one of the most infamous objects with no known whereabouts. Coming in at number 4, Peggy. I can only imagine how many people try to play tricks on paranormal investigators. Truly, I am sure that they receive countless fake cursed objects from people just trying to freak them out or annoy them in some way. But when Jane Harris, who apparently specializes in haunted dolls, received a package in the mail, it did not take her any time to figure out that this one was real. Inside the package was a blonde-haired doll with a note explaining that her name was Peggy and that she was haunted. Apparently, the woman who had mailed it tried seeking out a priest to exorcise the doll, but it was unsuccessful, and the woman no longer wanted the doll in her house as she was starting to fear for her life. Jane began an investigation immediately, posting numerous photos online for feedback. Not a day later, she had 80 emails claiming that the photos of Peggy had made them nauseous or given them intense migraines. Then she got the most frightening message of all. Apparently, one woman suffered a heart attack after looking at the photo. And while she survived, I mean, a heart attack from a photo of a doll is a lot. After just 4 days in her custody, Jane began feeling Peggy's wrath and suddenly became very ill. But when a friend took the doll away, Jane's health improved immediately. Peggy does not like anyone to know much about her apparently, but is known to invade people's dreams and give them haunting news. One woman said Peggy came to her in a dream telling her to watch out for her cat. The next morning, her cat was dead. After a while, the spirit that was trapped in this doll made life very difficult, and so Jane eventually gave it to a museum. Peggy is now locked away under constant supervision and actually requires a waiver before you can see her face to face, which to me just feels like a clear reason to leave her alone. Coming in at number 3, the conjured chest. Believed to have been built somewhere around 1830, the story behind this terrifying object all starts with a man named Jeremiah Graham. As the legend goes, he was making preparations for his firstborn, which included this hand-carved chest that had been made by one of his slaves. However, Jeremiah was not initially satisfied with the chest, and the enslaved man Remus received several brutal beatings from Jeremiah, eventually dying from the injuries. Now, for obvious reasons, this didn't sit well with the other enslaved members of the community, and in order to avenge his death, they decided to cast a curse on the chest to forever torment the family that killed their friend. Unaware of the curse, the chest was moved into the nursery, and soon after they began noticing that anytime someone put clothing into the chest, they ended up being involved one way or another in a tragedy, usually resulting in their death. Years later, one woman named Virginia is said to have tried to reverse the curse, enlisting the help of her maid to gather what was needed to put an end to the suffering and death associated with the chest. But it doesn't appear that it did the trick. For a few more generations, the chest continued haunting all that opened it until finally it was donated and hidden far away from the public eye, never to be seen or opened again. Coming in at number 2, the Devil's Rocking Chair. If you're a fan of the Conjuring series, then you may already be familiar with this cursed chair. But in the event you aren't, let me give you a quick backstory. In the early 1950s, the Gletzel family received this rocking chair, but in the summer of 1980, this piece of furniture would play a role in an exorcism so famous they made a movie about it. Long story short, young David Gletzel began seeing visions of what he described was a man with big black eyes, a thin face with animal features, jagged teeth, pointed ears, horns, and hooves. Soon after, David was believed to be possessed by the demon living inside this cursed chair, and that is when Ed and Lorraine Warren became involved. Then in comes Arn Johnson, the fiance of David's older sister, Debbie, who allegedly during the final exorcism told the demon to leave the boy alone and come into him. As legend has it, the demon moved into Arn, who then shortly after was convicted for killing his landlord, stating in his confession that the devil had made him do it. From there, the cursed chair stayed in Ed and Lorraine's museum for many years until Zach Baggin bought it from them. However, in 2019, Zach apparently closed down the exhibit featuring the infamous chair after too many terrifying supernatural encounters. Last up in our number 1 spot today is the Bassano vase. As the legend goes, the Bassano vase was a gift for a 15th century bride on her wedding day. But tragically, the bride never made it down the altar as she was killed the eve before her wedding, still clutching her beloved gift. It's said the bride vowed revenge for never being able to reach the altar and marry, and many believe the curse lives inside the vase, as each member of her family who took possession of it after her tragic death died soon after. But the strangest thing about this cursed object is that it vanished from the public eye for literal centuries. Somewhere between the 15th century and 1988, the vase's location was unknown until it popped up at an auction in Lyra and sold for $4 million. The vase was allegedly sold with a note that read, quote, "Beware, this vase brings death," and the man who bought the vase at the 1988 auction reportedly died soon after. And the next man who bought it was a doctor who died 3 months later. In fact, if the reports are true, the longest anyone has ever been able to withstand the evil vase before succumbing to the curse is 3 months. As of today, it's unclear just exactly where this vase is, and so the mystery of the disappearing vase remains. Let's just hope it's buried somewhere remote and will never be found again.
Coming in at number 10, the Elite Disney 33 Club in Anaheim, California. Disney might be open to the public, but this area of Disney is actually off limits and reserved only for the elite of the elite. In Disneyland, located in Anaheim, California, there is an area that was built by Walt Disney, but he unfortunately never got the chance to enjoy it due to his death before construction was finished. Now, the club was originally created as a place for him to entertain important guests. Now this area is still for important guests as the entry is invite only, on top of a $100,000 fee and $30,000 in annual dues. For those of you who have been to Disneyland, which I have not by the way, you probably have walked through New Orleans Square, which is a replica of Louisiana's iconic city. Somewhere there though, you'll find Club 33, a members only destination. Now the invite only club has a wait list, and I doubt that I'll ever get to go there, but it sounds really cool. Number 9.
The Hollywood sign, Los Angeles, California. I think you all know what I'm talking about when I bring up the Hollywood sign. Now, you might be confused. It's a huge tourist attraction. Yes, it is. But there are areas around the sign that are prohibited. The closest you can get to the sign is behind and above the sign, where you can enjoy the fabulous view of the city. The sign is on rough, steep terrain, and there are barriers to prevent unauthorized access. In the year 2000, the Los Angeles Police Department installed a security system featuring motion detection and closed-circuited cameras. Any movement in the marked restricted areas triggers an alarm that notifies the police, therefore you cannot go and touch the sign. Access to other areas are restricted, and the area is heavily surveilled as it's monitored 24/7, as mentioned before, by the Los Angeles Police and Fire Departments and park rangers. Although some people have gone through security to vandalize the sign. I mean, does anyone remember Hollyweed on January 1st, 2017? Nope, just me? Okay. Well, it remains mostly prohibited. Number 8. Hart Island, Bronx, New York. Hart Island is located in the Bronx, New York, and is a 1-mile long strip of land in the Long Island Sound that has served many functions over centuries. The island's first public use was as a training ground for the United States colored troops in 1864. Since then, Hart Island has been the location of a Union Civil War prison camp, a psychiatric institution, a tuberculosis sanatorium, a potter's field with mass burials, a homeless shelter, a boys' reformatory, a jail, a drug rehabilitation center, and a cemetery. You can get to the island, but it is very difficult. Hart Island is only open one weekend each month for families to visit grave sites. Other members of the public must book an appointment months in advance, but it can even be rejected. Coming in at number 7 is New York Stock Exchange, New York City, New York. Thanks to movies including The Wolf of Wall Street and The Big Short, many of us have become fascinated by what goes on inside the New York Stock Exchange. I mean, I know I am. It's easily the most important landmark on Wall Street, since the stock exchange practically created the financial district by marketing the neighborhood as an area of business. The main building was built in 1903, and it impressed everybody. This high-profile building was once open to visitors at one point, but it has been closed off to visitors since the September 11th attacks. The increased security now makes it impossible to get too close, but you can soak up all its glory from the outside. It sucks that you can't go inside anymore, but it's a valid reason, and safety is important. Number 6. Robbins Island, Suffolk County, New York. Located just off Long Island, this private island is not only extremely valuable, as it's impossible to access. The 435-acre teardrop of land belongs to billionaire businessman Louis Bacon and is thought to be worth around $500 million. He purchased it in 1993 at a bankruptcy court auction for only $11 million. He has made significant investments in restoring the neglected island, going so far as to import full-grown oak trees to replace the ones harvested for lumber years earlier. Some non-native grasses were removed from the island and replaced, and hunters reduced the overgrown deer population. The island has the healthiest turtle population in the state, which includes the eastern mud turtle. Louis has spent years rebuilding the ecosystem, and he believes allowing others on the island will lead to its destruction, so no one can visit. Number 5. The Knickerbocker Club, New York City, New York. If you happen to be among the world's elite, you might just be lucky enough to be invited inside this stunning Georgian mansion. If not, then this is as close as you'll get to the Knickerbocker Club, or the Knick. Now, what is it? It's considered one of America's most exclusive societies. It was founded in 1871 by 18 former members of the Union Club who did not like the Union's club expansion of the membership. Among the Knickerbocker Club founders were such prestigious New Yorkers as Alexander Hamilton and John Jacob Astor. This club is considered one of the most aristocratic gentlemen's clubs in the world, and it only has one rule concerning giving out information about the club, and that is to never give any information out about the club ever. The men-only club is secretive. It doesn't even have a website. Their single Yelp review says, "Truly one of the finest private men's clubs in America. We had a lovely dinner with friends there. It is a reciprocal with the club I belong to. Highly recommend if you get an invitation." Now, the fact that members are forbidden to discussing the going-ons with anyone is interesting, but it seems like someone blabbed though, because if it truly was a secret, we wouldn't know about it, now would we? Anyway, it had many notable members, including Franklin D. Roosevelt and financier J.P. Morgan. Number 4. Rikers Island, New York City, New York. Rikers Island is a 413-acre island in the East River between Queens and the Bronx that contains New York City's main jail complex. It's been there since 1932 and has gained a reputation for brutality and mistreatment. Rikers Island has a reputation for violence, both abuse and neglect of inmates, attracting increased press and judicial scrutiny that has resulted in numerous rulings against the New York City government and numerous by inmates on uniformed and civilian staff, often resulting in serious injuries. In May 2013, Rikers Island ranked as one of the 10 worst correctional facilities in the United States. It's also one of the world's largest correctional institutions and mental institutions that's operated by the New York City Department of Correction, which has a budget of $860 million a year. It has a staff of 9,000 officers and 1,500 civilians who manage 100,000 admissions per year. An average daily population is around 10,000 inmates. The likes of David Berkowitz, the serial killer known as Son of Sam, and Sex Pistols Sid Vicious were incarcerated on Rikers, and today it remains one of America's most notorious prisons. Number 3. Mount Weather, Bluemont, Virginia. If the world is ending, I want to go here. Mount Weather is a facility located in Bluemont, Virginia that is controlled by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. This facility is used to support emergency management operations and is located on a 434-acre site and is run by 240 employees. Mount Weather Emergency's Operations Center has important communication links with the White House and reportedly includes an underground bunker with its own hospital, crematorium, and emergency power plant. Today, Mount Weather is home to 6 major disaster operation facilities and remains off limits to civilians. It's considered the safest spot in the world. In the event of a nuclear war or zombie apocalypse, US government officials will be gathered and sent there. It was built during the Cold War, and this facility is designed to protect people and national treasures from an event of global destruction. Number 2. ADX Florence, Florence, Colorado. Could ADX Florence be America's most secure building? I think so. ADX Florence is an American federal prison in Fremont County near Florence, Colorado. It is operated by the Federal Bureau of Prisons, a division of the United States Department of Justice. It opened in 1994 and is classed as a supermax or control unit prison, referring to its extremely high levels of security, as it has a more controlled level of custody than maximum security prison. ADX Florence was commissioned when the Federal Bureau of Prisons needed a unit designed specifically for the secure housing of those prisoners more capable of extreme violence towards staff or other inmates. As of August 2022, there are a total of 341 inmates housed. They are confined 23 hours per day in single cells with facilities of poured reinforced concrete to deter self-harm, and they are under 24-hour supervision, which is carried out intensively with high staff-inmate ratios. Now, during their hour outside the cell, which can occur at any time, day or night, they are kept under restraint, handcuffed, shackled, or both. The hour outside the cell is for exercise and a phone call if they have earned the privilege. Their diet is restricted due to ensure that the food cannot be used to harm themselves or create unhygienic conditions in their cell. Some cells even have showers, which further reduces the amount of handling of inmates that correctional officers have to perform. In fact, this is such a secure facility that very few images of it exist. And coming in at number 1, Morgan Island, also known as Monkey Island, is located in Beaufort County, South Carolina. Historically, the island has been uninhabited due to its location and distance from the mainland. But in 1979, it was established as a home for a colony of free-ranging rhesus monkeys, hence the name Monkey Island. Originally, the monkey colony now located on Morgan Island was located at the Caribbean Primate Research Center in La Paraguera, Puerto Rico. According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, there were incidents of the free-ranging monkeys escaping, carrying viral herpes B infections, which led to outbreaks in the local population. Puerto Rico was alarmed by this, and South Carolina stepped in to offer an inhabited island island for research. In 1979 and 1980, over 1,400 animals were relocated to Morgan Island. The island is owned by the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, and the monkeys are owned by the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. The monkeys are used for public health research by the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Now, the risk they carry with having diseases is the reasons why it isn't safe for any human to come in contact with them. It's said that there are more than 3,500 monkeys and that it's such a safety issue that they are fed through an automated machine. Some humans have entered the island only if necessary, and after their visit to the island, they are quarantined to prevent spread of any diseases.
Starting us off at number 10 is Dawson, New Mexico. If any of the ghost towns on this list have a tragic past, it is definitely Dawson. The mining town was bought by the Phelps Dodge Corporation back in 1906, and they're the ones who really built up the town, putting in homes, facilities like hospitals, stores, a cinema, even a golf course. The city had 10 mines, and the place was booming with a population of 9,000 until disaster struck not once but twice. In 1913, Canyon Mine number 2 was shaken by an explosion in a neighboring town, and out of the 286 men who showed up to work that day, only 23 survived. Then, 10 years later, Canyon number 1 had a mine car that derailed into timbers, and the electric trolley cables sparked, igniting the coal dust. A majority of the 123 men that died that day were children of men from the previous disaster. Parts of the city's population moved after each explosion, and the demand for coal also declined quite quickly. By 1950, the last mine in Dawson was closed and the whole area was sold and the structures demolished. The town was just kinda left to rot. What's especially creepy about it though is the 400 white crosses in Dawson Cemetery that symbolize the miners who died. Imagine not knowing it was an abandoned city and just going there and seeing that. Be like, huh? Coming in at number 9 is Ruby, Arizona. This mining town started operating in the year 1877, and it was quite rich in things like silver, gold, copper, lead, and zinc. Apparently the first US post office was in Ruby, which is kind of like a cute Easter egg of information. What's not cute though are the 3 double homicides that took place, aka the Ruby murders. What a plot twist, no one saw that coming. In Feb of 1920, the 2 owners of the Ruby Mercantile were shot and killed during a robbery. According to the locals and eyewitnesses, the perpetrators were Manuel Garcia and Ezekiel Lara, and it was quite easy to identify them since they were the only 2 unknown Mexicans seen in Ruby at the time. Then in August of the next year, the shop's new owners, the Pearsons, were shot, killed, and robbed by the same group, yet their 3 daughters were somehow spared. The largest manhunt in the Southwest was still underway for these people, and a year later in July they struck again. 2 men in the gang were identified and arrested, and as they were being transported in a police car, the prisoners managed to get free and kill both of the attending officers. Despite all that, the late 20s were actually the peak of prosperity for Ruby. In the 30s, the mine was the leading zinc and lead producer in the state, but by 1940, the mine was closed down. A year later, the whole city was abandoned, but it's been kept pretty well preserved, I must say. At number 8, we have Bodie, California. Located east of the Sierra Nevada mountain range, Bodie struck gold in 1859, literally, but the hype around the town started actually growing after the Standard Company took things over in 1876. Within 3 years, the population had risen to about 7,000 to 10,000 people, and there were like 2,000 buildings in the city. But by the end of the 1870s came with a savage winter which killed hundreds of people through disease and exposure. Explosions and accidents in the mine also added to the death toll. The potential of the city brought in gamblers, miners, and other corrupt businessmen, and because of that, there were around 65 saloons, gambling halls, brothels, opium dens, and more. Some of their breweries were open 24/7, which back then was insane. But for that reason, the town's reputation started going down. Violence was at an all-time high. Someone would get killed or robbed every day, and street fights were a daily occurrence. By 1881, it was described by Reverend F.M. Warrington as a sea of sin lashed by the tempests of lust and passion. Sounds like the Las Vegas of that time. By 1912, the city started declining as mining profits decreased as well. Within a few years, the newspaper, railway, and last mine had all closed down, and by 1915, it was a ghost town, and it was actually named a National Historic Landmark in 1961. Filling on number 7 slot is Mystic, South Dakota, and honestly, I low-key just picked this one because of its name and that it reminded me of Mystic Falls from the Vampire Diaries. So Mystic is one of the many ghost towns located in the Black Hills mountain range, and Native Americans have quite an extended history with the area. It was actually called Sitting Bull before it was called Mystic. The city wasn't even really a city, it started off as a creekside camp in 1876 and somehow survived a really long time. Mystic's post office was built by 1885, 4 years later it had a railway line, and a second one by 1906. The town started importing coal into the hills and exporting gold out of them. And the journey definitely wasn't easy. A bunch of floods happened, destroying a lot of their bridges and railway lines. The Great Depression screwed them royally, their sawmill burned down, but they just kept bouncing back, and we like that never give up energy. I don't have it, but I like it. By the end of the Second World War, everything was going to shit and the mill was too expensive to operate, and then people stopped traveling there, the sawmill was closed, and so was everything else, and finally the whole population was just gone. Now at number 6 is Rhyolite, Nevada, located right near the eastern part of the Death Valley National Park. This town got its start in 1905 as multiple mining camps just sprung up out of nowhere. It was the gold rush, so people were migrating to Rhyolite left, right, and center. The city had a lot to offer. It had resident hotels, an opera house and symphony, a hospital, a stock exchange, but most appealing of all, its infamous red light district. Girls from San Francisco would get employed by the shops there, which was kind of like a delicacy, if you will. At its peak, the town had about 3,500 to 5,000 people, but it went down as quickly as it went up. The earthquake of 1906 and financial panic of the next year made money scarce, and the mine stock value started crashing. They started closing down, which meant miners were also moving out of the town, and by 1920 the place was a ghost town. Coming in at number 5 is Kalapana, Hawaii. So this town is part of the Puna district of Hawaii, and fun fact, it was home to the infamous Star of the Sea painted church. Hawaii is such a volcanic cesspool, it literally has 15 out of the 129 that are part of the Hawaiian Emperor Seamount chain. In 1990, lava from the vent of Kilauea destroyed most of the town and its houses. Over 100 houses were buried in the lava flow, as well as Kalapana Gardens. The church was moved so as to not perish as well. The flow was so bad that even 2 neighboring towns were destroyed, and a new coastline was formed under the 50 feet of lava flow. By 2010, there was literally only 35 houses left, and now the town is closed because of new destructive lava vents. It just don't stop, do it. At number 4 is Virginia City, Montana. So this city was founded in 1863 and was initially called Varina after the only First Lady of the Confederate States, Varina Howell Davis, but the judge objected to that and called it Virginia City instead. It took a matter of weeks for the town to start booming, people coming from all over for the gold rush. But this particular region had no justice system or law enforcement, yet it had a lot of wealth. And what happens when a place has no rules and a lot of money? A lot of shit. Criminal activity was at an all-time high. Road agents were killing and robbing people on the roads everywhere. They killed more than 100 people in a year. At its peak, it had 10,000 people, but of course when the gold ran out, so did the appeal of the city. By the 1940s, Virginia City had become a ghost town and was bought by Charles and Sue Bovee, who started maintaining the ruins, and by the 50s it was good for tourism. Fun fact, the frontier woman Calamity Jane lived there as well. Woohoo! Filling at number 3 slot is Shaniko, Oregon. Now plot twist, unlike nearly every single town on this list, Shaniko wasn't a mining town. It was for ranchers and was once called the wool capital of the world. People started making camps wherever they could find water, and it was actually initially called Cross Hollow and started properly booming at the start of the 20th century. The town was used as a transportation hub and was a center of sheep, wool, wheat, and cattle production. Their sales were like 3 and 4 million annually just for wool, which is incredible. At the start of the 1900s, there were 2 fires in the business district that ruined any extra hype about the city, and that's what jump-started it into decline. The place had been a ghost town since the 50s, but all the buildings are still there. The hotel, Sage Museum, Shaniko School, the ice cream shop Goldie's, and more. Now at number 2 is Kennecott, Alaska. So this was more of an abandoned mining camp than it was a huge city, but it was still kinda like a little town. Located next to Kennecott Glacier, a duo of prospectors traveled to the area in 1900 and found a bunch of malachite. The area had copper ores as well, and by the next year the Alaska Copper Company took root, and by 1905 things were going really well. There was a steamship line, a railway, a school, a hospital, tennis courts, and a bunch of mines. Between 1911 and 1938, Kennecott produced $200 million worth of iron ore. That is ridiculous. For a remote little town where the nearest bit of civilization is 60 miles away, that is a lot of money. By the end of the 30s, the place was deserted since mining profits had gone down, and honestly it was too far away from everything and it just wasn't the vibe anymore. The population was 3, and those people served as the Watchmen of Kennecott. And finally, at number 1 is Garnett, Montana. I was so pissed. I try not to repeat any states in this video and have it all be from different states, but alas, Montana is on here twice. Damn you, America, and your 50 states. The prospectors found the semi-precious red gems there and gold, which is where the city got its name from. The place was founded in the 1890s as a major commercial and residential area for mining and had around 1,000 people living there by 1898. It had 2 barbershops, 13 saloons, a school, 4 hotels, a doctor's office. It wasn't really that bad to live in at all. The city became abandoned after the gold ran out, but they would have left anyway since a huge fire broke out in 1912 and destroyed half the city. That part was never rebuilt again, which is super eerie. Just imagine burnt ruins for half the town and just historical old buildings on the other side. There has to be some symbolism in that, I'm sure of it. Ghana is now on the National Register of Historic Places and you can visit it, just don't move there.
Starting off this countdown, we have the pollution problem. America is a huge country with a population of over 328 million people. As a result, America is said to be the second biggest polluter in the world, the first being China. But historically, the US is responsible for more emissions than any other country. It is said that the average American throws away 4.4 pounds of trash daily. That means that around 1.4 billion pounds of trash gets thrown out of the US every single day. That's crazy. It's one of the most wasteful places on the planet. But the government doesn't want you to know these statistics. Instead, they want you to think that they're doing their part to combat climate change. Meanwhile, they are a huge polluter. On top of this, the US military is also a huge polluter. In fact, it is said to cause more pollution than 100 countries combined. In 2017, the US military bought about 270,000 barrels of oil a day. Its fuel usage alone results in more carbon dioxide than most medium-sized countries. Moving on to number 9, we have the ongoing waste. This next fact shocked me. So, since America has so much waste, they actually dump their trash into poor, undeveloped countries. These countries then have to deal with the waste and sort it and discard of it themselves. In 2018, Malaysia imported about 435 million pounds of plastic scrap from the US. Last year, about 68,000 containers filled with American plastic recycling was sent to undeveloped countries. The sad part is that most of the recyclables are contaminated with food or dirt, making it non-recyclable, meaning all this garbage is being piled up in other countries. In Hanoi, Vietnam, a woman named Nugent Hong Tham is among other workers that get paid only $6.50 a day, and they have to sort through America's recycling. She claims that outside of her home, it's just filled with garbage, from Cheeto bags to plastic bags to candy wrappers. She spends her days digging through the heaps, separating the recyclables from the trash. In 2019, 187 countries signed a treaty giving nations the power to block the import of contaminated or hard-to-recycle plastic trash. US was among the few countries not to sign the treaty. Making our way down the list at number 8, we have the spy kitties. Okay, this one is kind of funny, I can't lie. In the late 60s, the CIA put millions of dollars into research. What were they researching? Well, they wanted to see if cats could be trained spies. Yep. They planned to train cats to spy on the Soviet Union, but this was a huge fail. They called this Operation Acoustic Kitty. Basically, they implanted a microphone in the cat's ear and a radio transmitter in the cat's skull. Their plan was to have the cat lurk near foreign officials to pick up on their private conversations. But this went terribly wrong. During their first test, the cat wandered into the street and got struck and killed by a car. So yeah, they wasted millions of dollars with that plan. Coming in at number 7, we have the archived tweets. Since 2006, the Library of Congress has been keeping every single public tweet. That's right, the Library of Congress has a record of every tweet ever made. In 2013, they had more than 170 billion tweets saved, which is quite creepy. But they claim that they're doing this to preserve a record of knowledge. Yeah, okay, because tweets are really that important. But don't worry, in 2017, they said that they will no longer be keeping every single tweet. They now will be more selective with the ones that make it to the archives, meaning only tweets surrounding big events or themes will be saved. still, it's pretty creepy knowing that your tweets have been saved and people can access them in the future. Like, imagine all the embarrassing tweets that are probably saved in the archives. In the future, someone's gonna read them and spend hours trying to decipher them all. Like, what is hashtag YOLO? What do you think that meant? Moving on to number 6, we have the lobotomies. Back in the day, lobotomies were thought to cure severe mental illnesses. But the way that they were first conducted in the States were quite terrifying. In 1936, a neurosurgeon named Walter Freeman performed the first lobotomy in the US. Basically, it consisted of him drilling 2 holes in a person's skull and then sticking in a needle and swishing it back and forth. This was supposed to cut all the bad connections in the brain. He performed about 2,500 lobotomies before he was banned from doing so. A lot of people suffered from brain hemorrhaging or brain damage, and then other people even lost their lives. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the healthcare system. In America, the 3rd leading cause of death is from medical errors. That's right, this is something that most US doctors don't want you to know. A study in 2018 concluded that more than 250,000 people in the US die every year from medical errors. Other reports think that it's as high as 440,000 people. Some of the medical mistakes include error in judgment or care, a system defect, computer breakdowns, and mix-ups with the doses or types of medications administered to patients. One sad case of a medical error surrounds a 2-year-old girl named Emily Jerry. After finally being declared cancer-free, Emily's doctors wanted one more chemo treatment just to be sure. On the day of her final treatment, the technician filled her intravenous bag with more than 20 times the recommended dose of sodium chloride. This caused her to lose her life. Coming in at number 4, we have the firearms problem. So we all know that firearms are a huge problem in the United States. But what you may not have known is that more children die in the US from firearms than anywhere else in the world. Death by guns is the 2nd leading cause of death for kids. The first one being car crashes and the 3rd being cancer. Yeah, cancer kills less kids than guns in the States. In 2016, more than 3,000 children died from gun-related deaths. Only a small portion of that was from school shootings. It's sad, but if the states had better gun control, then tons of kids would still be alive today. Moving on to number 3, we have prison life. The United States incarcerates more people than any other country. Currently, there are around 2.2 million people behind bars. What's sad is that some of these inmates have a lengthy sentence for minor crimes that they committed. One reason for the high numbers is because of America's tough on crime attitude. Some prisoners are locked up for life for non-violent crimes. Because of this high number, overcrowding is a huge problem that they are facing. There are so many people being convicted and sent to jail, but not enough space for them. Now, it's said that 21% of incarcerated people are sentenced for a crime that takes a long time to process. So even if they are innocent, they spend a majority of their life in jail waiting to be sentenced. That is, if they can't afford bail. It is thought that more than 460,000 innocent people are in jail in America. In our second spot, we have the serial killers. America is said to have the most serial killers in the world. That's terrifying. There has been 2,320 identified serial killers in America. Now, the country with the second highest amount of serial killers is England, with only 116. That's nothing compared to America with over 2,000. So out of all the serial killers in the world, 70% of them are from the US. On top of that, there is assumed to be approximately 2,000 active serial killers that have not been caught yet. So that's great. Glad I'm safe in Canada. But fun fact, or maybe it's not so fun, but it's said that an average person walks past at least 16 murderers in their lifetime. So there's that. And in our number 1 spot, we have Project Sunshine. This is a secret that the US government tried to hide from us, but eventually it got leaked. During the 1950s, the US government was using stillborn babies to conduct radiation tests on. They wanted to determine the effects that radiation would have on humans and how much they could withstand. They called this Project Sunshine. Turns out that the parents of these children were never told that these tests were being conducted on their child. It's very sad and unethical. So basically, they were stealing body parts and tissues from morgues, particularly that of young children or babies, and then they ran tests on them. It is said that more than 1,500 samples were gathered worldwide. A leaked recording has caught Dr. Willard Libby, who was in on these experiments, saying, and I quote, "I don't know how to get them. He was referring to the body parts. But I do say that it is a matter of prime importance to get them, and particularly in the young age group. So human samples are of prime importance, and if anybody knows how to do a good job of body snatching, they will really be serving their country.
Number 10. Adesea. Adesea is a giant demon-eating demon in the religion and mythos of the Zuni people of the southwestern United States. He is a giant, several times larger than a normal human being. In one story, he is said to have long, wild gray hair and hands with skin so thick and gnarled that the knuckles appeared horned. In another tale, he is said to have chest hair as prickly as porcupine quills, immensely muscular arms covered in black and white scales, a scalp covered in bristly hair like a bison's mane, a mouth that stretched from ear to ear, and a wrinkled, swollen red face. Several stories agree that he had bulging eyes that did not blink, yellow tusks that protruded past his lips, and long talons. Adesea is depicted as having a number of unsavory behavioral traits. In addition to eating his fellow demons, he's also depicted as hungry for human flesh, and I'm so glad he didn't leave us out. He is also an inavert liar and is often depicted armed with weapons, so I wouldn't invite him into your life. Number 9. Dharmasan. You can summon Dharmasan by playing a little game mostly known by the name of the bath game. You must be in a bathtub, and while washing your hair, you must say Dharmasan fell down repeatedly until you finish. You will visualize a woman falling, her head hitting a rusty tap that impales her through her eye, after which she dies. The next day, it's said that the ghost of Dharmasan will follow. If you try to look directly at her, she will disappear. But if you keep glancing behind your right shoulder, you may get a glimpse of her. Her hair will be black and tangled, and she will have only one eye. She will attempt to get closer and closer to you as the day goes on. Should you spot her and find that she's too close for comfort, shout Tamar, that is stop, and run away. The idea is to put some distance between you and her, and do not allow her to catch you. When you catch her gaze, you can perform a chopping motion with your hand while shouting Kira in order to escape her and win the game, as long as it's done before midnight, that is. Failing to do so will grant her permission to enter your dreams, and that is, well, terrifying. Number 8. Flying heads. Flying heads are described as being ravenous spirits that are cursed with an insatiable hunger. They are generally described as resembling a human head with long dark hair, terrible eyes, and a large mouth filled with razor-sharp fangs. In some versions, the flying head has a pair of bat wings jutting from each side of its cheek and bird-like talons. In all instances, they're described as being larger in size than that of the tallest man and possessing a hide that no weapon can penetrate. According to native folklore, during an especially severe winter prior to European arrival, an unknown tribe in New York State was suffering a famine. The young men wished to move the tribe across the Great Lake to seek new opportunities, whilst the older men, believing the famine was a punishment for their crimes by the spirits, desired to stay and endure. Enraged by the old men's stubbornness, the young men ended their lives, decapitating the bodies and dropping their heads into the lake. However, one of the young men involved in the deaths became entangled in the pile of heads, falling into the lake and drowning. Then, after destroying those responsible for the deaths, the flying head began terrorizing other tribes. Number 7. Elevator Lady. You can summon the Elevator Lady by playing the elevator game / ritual. This one is as simple as going up and down between specific floors until a creepy lady enters the elevator with you. In this terrifying moment that she does appear, it's crucial that you do not acknowledge her. You just take the elevator up to the 10th floor. Then you'll have one chance to forfeit the ritual. If you want to proceed, simply step out of the elevator into an alternate dimension. The lady will ask you where you're going, but just ignore her. You may explore this world if you dare, and to get back to your original world, just repeat the steps you took to get to the alternate one, making sure to use the same elevator. Whatever you do though, do not speak or even look at her. If you do, she may decide to keep you for her own, and you don't want to know what happens then. Number 6. Wendigo. A Wendigo originates from the folklore of the Plains and Great Lake natives as well as some First Nations. It's based in and around the East Coast forests of Canada, the Great Plains region of the United States, and the Great Lakes region of the United States and Canada. Sometimes Wendigos are described as exceptionally thin, with skulls and skeletons pushing through its ash-colored mummy-like skin. Other stories describe the Wendigo as a well-fleshed giant who gets proportionately larger the more it eats. According to other legends, the Wendigo has pointed or animal animal-like ears with antlers or horns sprouting on its head. A Wendigo's eyes have been described as sunken or glowing like hot coals. Sharp and pointy teeth, extremely bad breath, and body odor are also often traits of a Wendigo. It is usually, but not always, endowed with powers such as superhuman strength and stamina that will allow it to stalk, overpower, and devour its victims. Wendigos are usually credited with exceptional eyesight, hearing, and senses of smell. They are said to move within the speed of the wind and have the ability to walk across deep snow or even over open water without sinking. It's said to invoke feelings of insatiable hunger/greed, the desire to eat other humans, and the propensity to end people's lives in those who fall under its influence. Number 5. Candyman. Having his life ended for simply loving a white woman, Daniel Robital had an unjust price for his death of having his hand cut off, being covered in honey, and having a hive set upon him, and then finally being set on fire after his torment was done. He was then summoned as an urban legend, taking on the form of pure malice, his name to become infamous in the town, killing any and all who invoke his name. According to this legend, if you look into a mirror and chant the name Candyman 5 times, he will appear behind you and kill you with his hook. For you see, the Candyman is a vicious killer with a bloody hook for a hand. He appears in the mirror covered in blood and bees and has nothing but death on his mind. If you summon him, you're just asking for a death sentence, okay? Just don't do it. Number 4. Paimon. If you've heard the name Paimon before, it's probably because this is the demon in Ari Aster's film Hereditary, but it's actually a real demon. Paimon is a spirit named in the early grimoires. Though there's some variation in his appearance, his grandeur is mentioned in all accounts. Paimon wears a woman's face but a man's form, regaled with fine jewelry and a golden crown. His voice is so unnaturally loud and authoritative that it hurts anyone who listens. To merely understand the demon, you must request he lower his voice. Preceding him is a host of spirits who appear as men playing loud fanfare with a diverse arrangement of horns, cymbals, and other musical instruments. Paimon is one of the greater kings of hell, and like other kings, he travels with an entourage. When summoning Paimon, be aware that he travels with 2 lesser kings and 25 of the 200 spirit legions under his command. And to even reach Paimon, there may be a network of lesser demons who act as intermediaries between you and Paimon. You may even have to appeal and compel demons just to navigate a path to find King Paimon, so it's just difficult overall. Number 3. Skinwalker. Okay, so not necessarily a demon, but hear me out. In Navajo culture, a skinwalker is a type of harmful witch who has the ability to turn into, possess, or disguise themselves as an animal. According to some traditions, skinwalkers were once the healers and medicine men who were corrupt by their own power and turned to evil. By draping the hide of a certain animal over themselves, the witch takes on the form and traits of that animal. In doing so, the witch gains the animal's strength, speed, and endurance. They sometimes transform themselves into animals simply for the purpose of traversing great distances quickly. They may also transform in order to wreak havoc on others, as their identity will be hidden and they'll be able to escape quickly if necessary. They curse people and cause great suffering and death, one Navajo writer explained. At night, their eyes grow like hot coals. It's said if you see the face of a skinwalker, they have to kill you. If you see one and know who it is, they will die. If you see them and you don't know them, they have to kill you in order to keep you from finding out who they are. Skinwalkers are also telepathically linked to each other, enhancing their coordination during hunts and fights, but allowing little to no privacy at any time. Skinwalkers can read other humans' minds and control them, and skinwalkers in 2 different groups can communicate telepathically and are able to choose which thoughts they share. They can also copy animal or human voices to lure victims to them to feed on. They generally copy the sound of a human that is in need of help, so don't get tricked. Number 2. The Midnight Man. I'm not gonna lie, this is a cool sounding name, but whatever you do, don't summon him. I mean, can you think of a better way to spend an evening than inviting a ghostly spirit into your home and having him chase you around in the darkness for over 3 hours while you avoid him? Yeah. Okay, well, this game is called the Midnight Game, and the ritual begins with you pricking yourself to draw blood. It's basically hide and seek, and once you perform the needed steps, open your door and let the Midnight Man in. The goal of the game is to avoid meeting the Midnight Man in the dark. Continually moving about your home will make it more difficult for him to find you, and should you stop moving at any point, he will catch you. Accounts differ as to what happens to the players caught by the Midnight Man. Some claim he will induce a hallucination of your worst fear until the end of the game. Others Others claim he'll remove your organs one by one. Both outcomes are to be avoided at all costs. At 3:33 a.m., the Midnight Man will leave your home, and then you can safely end the game and be free of him. And coming in at number 1 is Bloody Mary. The roots of the mirror game known as Bloody Mary stretch back to a folk tradition practiced by young people in the 19th century. And as for who Bloody Mary is, well, that changes depending on who you're talking to. Some say she's Mary Worth, who may have been either a Puritan woman who was tried and executed for witchcraft, or a woman who was killed in a car crash. Some say she's the vengeful spirit of a mother who lost her child, and still others say she's Mary Tudor, the Queen of England who reigned from 1553 to 1558 and became known as Bloody Mary for the executions she carried out. In the ritual of today, Bloody Mary allegedly appears to individuals or groups who repeatedly chant her name into a mirror placed in a dimly lit or candlelit room. The Bloody Mary apparition allegedly appears as a corpse, witch, or ghost that can be friendly or evil and is sometimes seen covered in blood, hence the name. The lore surrounding the ritual states that participants may endure the apparition screaming at them, cursing at them, strangling them, stealing their soul, drinking their blood, or scratching their eyes out. Which is so kind of her, eh?
Starting us off at number 10 is Elms Hotel and Spa. Located in Missouri, some believe this hotel might just be the most haunted in the entire state. Originally built in 1888, just 10 years after its construction, the Elms Hotel was destroyed by a fire. It was a tragic event, but luckily no one lost their lives. But what's mysterious is that in 1910, the hotel went up in flames once more. Again, no one lost their lives, but this time, passersby noticed something. It appeared as though a spirit was walking around the embers, and rumors began circulating that somehow the mysterious entity had lit the flames. But just who exactly is this spooky arson demon, and why did they burn down the hotel? More importantly, if it was them, what made them stop? And it's not just fire maniac ghosts that haunt these halls. Another commonly seen apparition is that of a grieving woman who wanders the halls looking for her little one. But make no mistake, though she may be grieving, she is an angry entity. She'll pull at their hair or throw objects across the room while they are asleep to try and get your attention. Maybe she believes the guests are who took her little one from her, or maybe she is just angry to have visitors there. But either way, if I were you, I would not stay the night if you're looking for a peaceful sleep. Coming in at number 9, the Biltmore Hotel. Back in 1929, New York gangster Thomas "Fatty" Walsh was staying in the Everglades suite on the 13th floor of the Biltmore Hotel in Florida. Apparently, Fatty routinely stayed here and used the suite as a speakeasy and casino for him and his friends. However, after a heated argument over gambling debts, Fatty was shot by fellow mobster Edward Wilson and died right on the scene, and it appears he has never left. Once a player, still a player, the New York gangster is notorious for appearing only to women who he deems attractive and tricks them into visiting him on the 13th floor. One woman recounted her stay with her husband and said while in the elevator, all of a sudden, the doors opened on the 13th floor, despite that neither of them had requested that floor. They waited a moment and the doors wouldn't close, so the woman stepped out to see what was going on. As soon as she did, the doors slammed behind her on the elevator and it continued its journey to the lobby. The husband, worried for his wife, tried to reach the 13th floor but was unable, so he went back to their suite only to find his wife beside herself and outright spooked. She said when the doors shut behind her, she heard a maniacal laugh and the smell of cigar smoke. On top of Fatty's ghost, other entities are routinely seen walking through the walls, slamming doors, or watching you sleep. So it's a no for me. Coming in at number 8 is Hawthorne Hotel. While this entire Salem hotel is said to be haunted by several different entities, the rooms you really need to be afraid of are 612 and 325. Room 612 and the 6th floor in general is where the apparition of a woman is often seen roaming the halls, who many believe is the ghost of Bridget Bishop, the first woman executed during the witch trials. Accused of bewitching 5 other women, she died in 1692 and remains haunting the property, seeking revenge for her life taken too soon. Those that stay in this room report a strong smell of apples, which most think has to do with the fact that she owned an apple orchard on the land where the hotel was built in 1925. But of course, it is her frightening apparition that stares at you while you sleep that is really unsettling. As for room 325, it's believed the entities that haunt this room may have been past guests. No one is quite sure why they are there, but these entities are definitely frightening. Guests report lights turning on and off with no explanation,
ventilation, as well as water faucets doing the same within the room. While lying on the bed, guests have reported experiencing an extreme level of cold, with many reporting being grabbed or tugged at while trying to fall asleep. Plus, at night, it's said the screams and cries of the past guests can be heard echoing in the room. But what's strange is it never seems to occur anywhere else in the building. Coming in at number 7, Fort Garry Hotel. Built in 1903, since its doors opened to the public, many famous figures have stayed overnight, including Queen Elizabeth II, King George VI, Louis Armstrong, even Liberace. But don't let the star-studded guest list ease your suspicions. This place is straight up frightening, especially room 202, where it said a woman took her own life by hanging in the closet. Those that have dared to stay in the haunted room claim they saw blood drip down the walls and that a terrifying woman wearing a cloak would appear out of nowhere, often hovering over the foot of the bed while you sleep at night. What's even scarier is that some say she will crawl into the bed with you and that you can feel her cold, ghostly frame wrap around you. But it's not just the room where you might run into the spooky ghoul. She's known to haunt the hotel lounge as well, where staff and guests alike claim to hear loud cries coming from the same corner. I mean, unless you're looking to literally cuddle up with a ghost, I would steer clear of this one. Coming in at number 6, the Fairmont Hotel. While many of us know Banff for the gorgeous, picturesque Rocky Mountains, the famous Fairmont Hotel also has a dark secret. Room 873. As the story goes, years and years ago, an entire family was killed in this very room. After a long investigation, the room was refurbished and went back into the usual cycle. But soon the hotel staff were receiving many disturbances about the room that sent their blood running cold. Guests said they would fall asleep only to be awoken by screams, and that when the lights turned off, bloody handprints would be found on the mirrors. Staff would rush to the room to investigate, but all seemed to have disappeared by the time they got there. Afraid of what lurked inside, the room was sealed shut and never to be entered again. And if you go there now, no trace of the room exists. There is only a long hallway where a door used to be, and if you knock along the wall, you'll hear a hollow noise where it's believed the room was once sealed up many years ago. But just because they've locked up this door doesn't mean the terrifying ghosts were trapped inside. It seems room 692 has taken over as the most haunted room in the joint, and the same kinds of frightening phenomena continue. And if that weren't enough, it's also reported the ghost of a bride is seen dancing in the ballroom. It said she tragically lost her life on her wedding day after tripping down the stairs, breaking her neck, and being set ablaze by nearby candles. Some guests claim to have witnessed her on fire walking through the halls, and who knows, she might just come and haunt you in room 692. Coming in at number 5, the Empress Hotel. Located in Victoria, British Columbia, the Empress Hotel is a decadent building known to be visited by some of the most elite of our society. But don't be fooled by its gorgeous exterior and extravagant decor. It just might be one of the most haunted hotels in all of Canada. There are many ghost stories told about this hotel, like the construction worker who was working during the 1960s and came across a shadowy figure hanging from the chandelier, only to discover a staff member had taken their life in that very room exactly 1 year prior. Guests also report an elderly woman in pajamas who'll knock at your door in the middle of the night asking for help finding her room, only to take you to the elevator and disappear right before your eyes. It's believed she was a ghost who haunted a room that has since been demolished due to the need for more elevators, hence her confusion and disappearance as soon as she steps foot into one. Others, like the building's architect and a young girl, haunt the building, but the most frightening spirit is the maid, Lizzie. Back in 1909, 1 year after the hotel's opening, Lizzie stepped out onto the hotel fire escape to say her rosary, as she did every night. But this time, unbeknownst to poor Lizzie, a contractor had disassembled the platform, and so Lizzie plummeted to her death from the 6th story. Guests who now stay anywhere on the 6th floor claim to have seen her walk through walls or hear her screams late at night, and believe she is out seeking revenge on the worker responsible for the end of her life. Coming in at number 4, Tubac Golf Resort and Spa. It's one thing to witness the sight of a ghost, but in my opinion, it's a whole other terror to be physically grabbed or moved by one. According to one hotel worker back in 2010, they ended up having to work late, so instead of going home, he just decided to stay the night in the Otero Ranch House. The ranch house had long been associated with ghostly apparitions and frightening tales, but the staff member was was exhausted and it was the only room available, so he figured he would take his chances. When he got in, he decided to lay down on the couch and watch some TV for a bit before heading to bed, when suddenly he felt it move, and not just a little. According to the staff member, the entire couch lifted up off the floor, and with him in it, jerked several feet towards the TV. He was immediately freaked out, but before he could get up off the couch, the curtains that hung across the room from him lifted up and came down with a swoosh on top of him. Needless to say, he immediately bolted from the room and did not dare spend the rest of the night. Although he still works at the resort, he has never again stepped foot in the Otero Ranch and will choose sleeping in his car over ever staying a minute in the haunted room. Coming in at number 3, Hotel Provincial. Branded as one of the most haunted places in New Orleans, the Hotel Provincial is located in the infamously haunted French Quarter. Back in the day, there was a military hospital just down the street from the hotel, and one of the buildings used a medicinal herb garden for the hospital, which seems a little strange, but does make sense when you find out the kinds of spirits that haunt the halls. Today, the hotel consists of 5 buildings, and although ghosts are known to lurk in each, the most haunted building is believed to be number 5. Guests of building number 5 have reported seeing insane things, such as Confederate soldiers covered in blood, moaning from agonizing pain, who miraculously disappear once the lights turn on. Others have reported apparitions of surgeons in the halls, and maybe most disturbing is the amount of guests that have seen strange pools of blood appear on their bedding or the floor that disappear just as fast as they came into view. One guest even reported that as the elevator door opened on the hotel's 2nd floor, the hospital was entirely in view. So it seems as though the soldiers that died in the hospital down the street took a liking to the hotel and continued to haunt all the visitors who enter to this day. Coming in at number 2, Ottawa Jail Hostel. As you probably already figured out from the name, once upon a time this building was a jail. It opened its doors to the public in 1862 and quickly became the site of many public executions. On top of that, living conditions were harsh, with small, cold, and windowless cells that only had a small hole to allow for airflow. But things didn't start getting spooky until years later. After the building was converted into the hostel it is today, the parking lot was partially excavated to build a bridge, but to the construction workers' horror, the remains of 140 bodies were uncovered on the ground, and it's believed that all 140 bodies were prisoners who lost their life to execution. The most famous inmate was Patrick James Whelan, a man who up until his last breath pleaded he was not guilty of his convicted crime. What's worse is that he was told his body would be transported back to Montreal after his execution, but this promise was not kept, and they laid him to rest on the prison grounds. Angry and out for revenge, many guests say they have seen him or even been the victim of his wrath during their stay. One guest in particular, who made it very clear that she didn't even believe in ghosts prior to her stay, said at 1 o'clock in the morning she was woken by someone grabbing her arm and trying to pull her out of the bed. Her friend, who was across the room from her, woke when the girl screamed, "Let me go," into the darkness, and the two were both so frightened they couldn't fall back asleep. And last up, in our number 1 spot, La Pavilion Hotel. Just minutes away from the notorious French Quarter lies the luxurious Pavilion Hotel. But despite its lavish exterior, it is believed to be the home to over 100 spirits. And some paranormal investigators even believe the building sits on top of a portal to the other side. An interesting theory, considering the building's less than ideal history. Although today the area is a tourist hotspot, back in the 19th century, the ground where La Pavilion sits was deemed completely inhospitable and incredibly dangerous. It was the frequent spot for foul deeds and late night killings, which is likely why so many spirits reside in the hotel's 4 walls. Among the most talked about are a couple seen dressed in beautiful clothing roaming around with googly eyes. The couple will enter an elevator, but then it never goes anywhere. Instead, the usual ping sound rings loudly and the doors open up again, revealing no one inside. Many also claim to have witnessed a young woman on the 9th floor reported to have died on the steps of the hotel. But the truly terrifying entity only reveals herself at night. One guest staying on the most notoriously haunted 9th floor said that in the middle of the night, he was woken by a woman dressed in all black, sitting at the foot of his bed. He was speechless and terrified and went to scream, but the entity leaned in, ran her icy cold fingers through his hair and said, "You belong to me. I'll never let you go." Needless to say, he never returned, and I do not blame him. If I ever saw that lady in my room, I would be running as fast as I could.
Starting off this countdown, we have the vampire fish falling from the sky. Back in 2015, something really weird happened in Alaska. A bunch of vampire fish, aka lampreys, were seen falling out of the sky and landing on people's lawns. Now, if you've never seen a lamprey before, they're terrifying. They look like something you see in your nightmares. It looks like a mix between a snake, an eel, a worm, and like a leech. They can be anywhere from 5 to 40 inches in length and attack fish by sucking the life out of them. Lampreys have 11 or 12 rows of teeth that wrap around in their mouth like a ring. I'm telling you, they're terrifying. Now imagine this, these aquatic creatures fallen from the sky and landed down on the ground right in front of you. People were terrified when this was happening, and rightfully so. They were probably thinking that it's like the end of the world. Anyways, in the end, they believe that this was caused by gulls grabbing them out of the ocean and then dropping their dead bodies when flying over someone's lawn. Which makes me feel a bit better, like at least we know they weren't just like spawning out of the sky, you know? In our 9th spot today, we have the upside down tree garden. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then why don't you smash that like button, because it really helps us out. This is actually quite beautiful, and I would love to go to Alaska just to see this garden. Located in Mendenhall Valley, it is filled with trees that are literally planted upside down. These are referred to as flower towers. They had their tops buried in the ground and their roots are up in the air. On top of the roots, they then form like a little basket where beautiful bright flowers are planted on top. Now you may be wondering, who designed this garden and why? Well, in 1985, a landslide uprooted a bunch of trees and destroyed one of the main streams. So a man named Steve, a landscaper, was assigned to restore the stream. As he was working on it, he picked up a large fallen tree stump that was upside down and slammed it into the soft mud. Then he was like, you know, that's cool, and then continued to take all these trees and just put them in the mud upside down. And Steve was right, because it does look frickin' cool. Coming in at number 8, we have the giant crab, aka the red king crabs. Now when I say that these things are giant, they are giant, like massive. They can grow up to 25 pounds with a leg span of 5 feet. Dude, I'm about 5'5.5", so those things would be close to my size if I like laid down beside them, which I never would, but anyways, fishing them in Alaska is really popular. Roughly 100 boats go out fishing for them over a period of 2 to 3 months, and millions of pounds of this crab are harvested. So it must be an Alaskan delicacy. In our 7th spot today, we have the moose poop jewelry. And you heard me correctly. There are people in Alaska that turn moose poop into earrings, necklaces, you name it. I mean, hey, it's sustainable, so why not? But just the thought of someone like handling moose poo, it just makes me shiver. You know, like the smell would get to me. But it's not only jewelry that you can buy there. You can get tree ornaments or keychains all made out of moose poop too. Don't worry though, the poo is fully dried and double coated with a seal, so not only does that strengthen it, but it also makes sure that it doesn't smell. In our 6th spot, we have the abandoned igloo city. Located in Cantwell, Alaska, there's an abandoned igloo building. It was first created with the intention to be a cool little hotel, but it never got fully completed. Back in the 1970s when they were building it, the workers kept failing to beat building codes at the time. So they just gave up. And it was easier and cheaper to just leave the building up instead of tearing it down, so that's why it's still there. Now the outside might look complete, but the inside is not finished at all. So now it's just a cool little tourist attraction. But sadly, you're not allowed inside to explore. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Dr. Seuss house. Again, another place that I would love to visit. Located in Willow, Alaska, the Dr. Seuss house, or the Goose Creek Tower, is a 185 feet tall structure that looks like several houses stacked on top of each other. And that's because it basically is. it. It honestly looks like something straight out of a Dr. Seuss book, which is why it's given that name. Anyways, the bottom of the house started by a 40 by 40 foot log cabin. Then the designer started adding more and more cabins on the house, each getting smaller and smaller as they ascend into the sky. But they unfortunately were forced to stop when they reached the height of 185 feet. Because if they go past 200 feet, then they're getting into federal airspace territory. In our fourth spot, we have HAARP. HAARP, aka High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, was created by the government to analyze the ionosphere, which is the area where the Earth's atmosphere meets space. Seeing this area from afar, it looks weird. It's just like a parking lot filled with massive antennas. But this place also has a number of conspiracy theories surrounding it. For example, many people believe that the government is using this base to control the weather or even mind control us. Another theory is that the government is actually using this place to create and test geothermal weapons, space weapons, or even death ray weapons. It's crazy, I know. Coming in at number 3, we have the outhouse races. Imagine visiting Alaska and then seeing a bunch of people in outhouses on skis racing down the street. This is a real thing that they do in Alaska as part of the Anchorage Fur Rendezvous. So teams actually create and design / decorate their own outhouses. Like I said, the outhouses are then placed on skis or a snowboard. And then 4 team members push or pull the outhouse to the finish line while one person is inside of it. Not gonna lie, this looks extremely fun. Like, I'd love to watch this race or even design my own outhouse. As weird as that sounds, I never thought I would ever say that sentence in my life. Coming in at number 2, we have the Lady of the Lake. Now, when I first heard this, I'm like, damn, I bet this is about a creepy ghostly lady that like drowned in an Alaskan lake and now haunts the area. I was completely wrong. I was way off. Okay, I've just been doing way too many ghost videos lately. Anyways, the Lady of the Lake is an abandoned aircraft that is submerged at the bottom of a lake in Alaska. Basically, in 1955, the Air Force got rid of all the WB-29 Super Fortress planes due to an accident. So they took this plane and brought it to the lake. That's when it was used for open water extraction training. But after using it for quite some time, they're like, nah, sorry, it's still too dangerous to use this plane. So they literally just left it there and then it sank to the bottom. So there you go. And in our number 1 spot today, we got the Blue Babe. This is the name given to the mummified remains of an Ice Age bison. The remains are more than 36,000 years old. So basically, during the Alaskan gold rush, when they were looking for gold, they came across a number of mummified animals. Obviously, they didn't care because it wasn't gold, so they just tossed the bodies aside. Then in 1979, a miner was like, yo, what the hell is this? Because he just saw a pair of bison feet sticking out of the mud. They carefully dug it out, and like I said, they discovered that this bison was 36,000 years old. Now, what's kind of weird is that they then took the bison's skin off of its carcass and just attached it to a replica model of it. Like, that was their way of preserving it. But still, it's kind of weird, like de-skinning and then reconstructing a dead animal.
Coming in at number 10, we have Who Killed Kennedy? Now, the story in the book says that Lee Harvey Oswald was the one who shot Kennedy on that day when he was in front of everyone in America. But we're not here to stick to the books. They don't keep all the secrets in the books. When you go back to the old footage, we see that there was for sure 2 shooters. So, who was the second shooter on that day? There also is a ton of motivation to have Kennedy killed. He was starting to crack down on organized crime. He might have been sleeping with Marilyn Monroe. He was supporting the civil rights movement, and he wanted to make it law to give black people equal pay to white people. And there were a whole bunch of other things that Kennedy was trying to push that would have cost the super rich millions, maybe even billions. And after he was killed, his brother was killed, and Marilyn Monroe mysteriously had an overdose. And the guy who was accused of killing Kennedy was shot and killed before he could ever stand trial, so we never got the full story from this dude. The whole thing is wrapped in so much mystery, and we will probably never get to the bottom of this. Coming at number 9, we have Harvey Weinstein. This was an open secret in Hollywood for a long time. When word came out that Harvey Weinstein was one of the most notorious rapists in Hollywood history, the world was shocked. But here's the thing. everyone knew about this. Not like me, everyone, but everyone in show business. There was even a story of Courtney Love telling other women that if Harvey Weinstein ever invites you to the Four Seasons, don't go, because that's where he pulls all of his dirty tricks. Thankfully, all of the secrets about this man are out in the open, and now he has been thrown behind bars and will hopefully never be heard from again. Enjoy your twilight years while you're brutally beaten in jail. Good riddance. I only put this one at number 9 because it used to be a secret, but now everyone knows what's going on. Coming in at number 8, we have disinformation agent. So here's a tactic that will only be spouted as some mad rhetoric that some internet weirdos believe in, but here's the thing, it's absolutely real. Disinformation is something that the American government will use all the time to try and muddy the waters, so when information leaks out about their top secret experiments, no one finds out what they're actually up to. The information is mixed in with some of the bull crap that they made up, so you don't know what is true. A perfect example of this is the Roswell aliens. For decades, people believed that there were aliens flying through Roswell, that for whatever reason this was a hot spot that aliens wanted to visit. I don't know why they would want to go to a desert as their first place to visit on planet Earth. That is for sure not the best thing we have to offer. But that was a myth made up by the CIA. The reason they did this was because they were testing experimental aircrafts in the area. If these UFOs were ever spotted and people thought they were aliens, they would never try to investigate them as American military devices, and this would keep all of the American military projects secret. Coming in at number 7, we have Area 51. That being said, there are some squirrely things that are going on in Area 51 that we don't know about. The rumors about this place are endless. Some say that they have everything locked away in this secret location. I mean, we're talking about secret weapons that could demolish entire cities. Things that would make a nuke look like a bow and arrow. There are rumors that the future of space travel is locked away in this place, that they have spaceships that can move faster than the speed of light, which is supposed to be impossible, but the eggheads at Area 51 might have found a way to do it. Element 115 is supposed to be one of the most powerful compounds on the planet, and the fuel to all these futuristic spaceships, that's supposed to be locked away down there. Alien life is apparently down there too. Can you guys just open it up for a little while so we could run through and take a bunch of pictures of this stuff? Like, please? Come on, be cool. Coming in at number 6, we have who you are. Here's something you don't think about all the time, but the American government is constantly working with powerhouses like Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, and many others, constantly collecting data on you. They're listening to your phone calls, which we know from everything that Edward Snowden leaked. You can listen to the podcast with him on the Joe Rogan Experience, which is absolutely frightening. Now, even though America might not be looking right at your information all the time, they are collecting it. They have a file on you right now that they could pull up at any time. They have recordings of almost all of your conversations. They have data on you big time. In fact, the American government might know you better than you know yourself. Coming in at number 5, we have the moon base. Now this one is major speculation, but apparently the Americans didn't just land on the moon, leave a flag, and then bounce. They built a base up there so they could have a military advantage that no one would expect. The idea behind this is that in the late 50s there was a plan to take a nuke up to the moon, leave it there, and blow it up. This way the whole world could watch a nuke blow up on the moon, and it would display how powerful America is. Now that was a real plan. They obviously didn't go through with this plan because it's super extra, but people think they still went up there, placed nukes there, just in case they have to shoot a moon nuke at someone someday. Coming in at number 4, we have what's going on with the food. What is going on with American food? It has been known for a long time that many people have their hands in the American food supply, from pharmaceutical companies to Monsanto's to billionaire lobbyists who can manipulate the FDA to bend to their will with money. It goes from small stuff like no labeling on GMO products to large stuff like sneaking high fructose corn syrup into everything. And in some states, it's cheaper to buy fruit punch than it is to buy water. It's hard to keep yourself healthy when the super rich are going out of their way to make sure that everything you put in your mouth is poison. Coming in at number 3, we have time travel. We think it would be impossible to travel through time, but apparently the Americans have been doing this for quite some time. Declassified information about Project Pegasus came forward, which revealed that DARPA had been working on time travel for years, and while the final pieces of the report suggested that they shut down the program due to lack of success. There have been reports from attorney Andrew D. Basiago. He stated that not only has the US government perfected this tech, but that he has also been sent through time himself. Honestly, I hope that this is true, because this would be the answer to fixing global warming. I would just hope that whoever is using this power isn't completely evil, please. Coming in at number 2, we have the destabilization of Iran. In the 1960s, Iran elected a new leader, and it seemed that the country had a prosperous new future. The leader was left-leaning, agnostic, and wanted to see a future that had a free and powerful Iran. But having Iran as a new powerhouse in the Middle East did not fare well for the American interests, so they staged a coup. Through American broadcasting systems, they televised a fake revolution and posted it all over Iranian news. This made the Iranian people think that a revolution was happening and gave fuel to the anti-Western sentiment that some people felt about the new leader. They overthrew a democratically elected official and put a Shah in place who would tear down any hope of Iran being a free and prosperous country. And coming in at the number 1 spot, we have who killed Jeffrey Epstein. Probably the worst secret to come out of America in recent years is the fact that one of the most rich and powerful people on the planet, who had ties and relationships with many high-profile people throughout the world, everyone from governors to presidents to billionaires to actors to people all throughout Hollywood to princes and kings and all that stuff, was also in possession of an island who he used for sex trafficking. He would use this island so all of these high-profile scum could perform horrible deeds with underage people. And then it was discovered, people came forward, this guy was arrested and then thrown in jail. Now people sat and waited for the most high-profile case in American history to be put underway, but before Epstein could spill the beans, he took his own life in solitary confinement. But this was super suspicious because the camera to his cell was turned off at the time of his death, and his injuries were in conjunction with someone being strangled, not someone being hung. So it was pretty clear that this guy who had dirt on the most rich and powerful people on the planet was killed so he wouldn't open his mouth. Now the question is, who killed Jeffrey Epstein?